If you want thought-provoking discussions, great guests, and plenty of laughs, go ahead and check out the Culture Podcast with Jeff and Ant every Monday morning, wherever you listen to podcasts. It's where hip-hop and life intersect. Also, check out the website, theculture.one, for even more content. The Culture Podcast, inspired by and for the culture.
Rock God is stone cold. The Hellraiser is back.
Here we go. Evolution of the Shield.
John Cena versus the Showstopper.
Hulk Hogan and The Rock in the same ring.
You will never take my place at the head of the table.
Undertaker with a Hell's Gate submission. Oh my God! What?
My God, Michaels just kicked Cena's head off.
The Monday Night Wars have come to WrestleMania.
It'll be The Rock. It'll be Austin one-on-one.
Third and final, The Undertaker.
Do you believe in miracles?
The streak is over.
Hey, what's going on, guys? And welcome back to WWE Retro on the WWE podcast on this Friday, May 12th, as we are inching closer and closer towards the Clash of Champions pay-per-view to be held in Saudi Arabia. And one of the biggest matches that will be held at the Clash of Champions pay-per-view will be for the World Heavyweight Championship between Seth Rollins and whoever comes out on the SmackDown side of things tonight on Friday Night SmackDown. And last week, obviously, I wasn't here because it was a pay-per-view week, and we always do not record Retro on pay-per-view weeks. But we are back today to talk about a very pressing issue, and that is the history of the World Heavyweight Championship. And I think that this is incredibly important to discuss for people to realize just how important and crucial this world title was from the early 2000s until the early 2010s. An 11-year run of the World Heavyweight Championship being presented oftentimes on equal footing with the WWE Championship. And you know, you go back all the way to 2001 when they start the invasion angle, and Booker T gets brought in as the WCW champion, a 5-time WCW champion, as he famously coined for himself. And they quickly found themselves in a conundrum where they were forced to kind of unify their titles, because after the invasion angle was done, and during the invasion angle, the WCW Championship was largely held by The Rock, save for a quick, I believe, month-long run by Y2J Chris Jericho. But they quickly had to unify the championships, because now that invasion was done, you couldn't have two world champions walking around, and this was well before the brand split. So they unify the championships. Chris Jericho becomes the first ever undisputed champion. And just like that, you have both these titles get merged together and form as the undisputed champion, a belt that was brought in officially as a singular entity after WrestleMania 18 when Triple H defeated Chris Jericho. And it was that title that would be held by JBL and Eddie Guerrero, that old school WWE Championship. But one thing that's always been consistent when WWE merges the titles with the WWE Championship is that eventually the second title will always be absorbed, and it will later go on to be known as just the WWE title. We saw that with the WCW Championship, and then we saw it in 2013 with the World Heavyweight Championship, and I believe that we will see it eventually with the WWE Universal Championship as when they bring it to just a one singular world title. So we get to 2002. You have one world champion, early on era of the brand split, and the champion can float between both shows. Now, between WrestleMania 18 and SummerSlam in 2002, there were a lot of title changes for the WWE Championship. You had Triple H win it at WrestleMania. Then you had Hulk Hogan defeat Triple H at Backlash. The Undertaker defeats Hulk Hogan. And then The Rock defeats The Undertaker and Kurt Angle in a triple threat match at Vengeance 2002. One of the better triple threat matches in the history of the company, and one that isn't talked about a lot. The Rock becomes the WWE champion, and he goes into SummerSlam 2002 to main event against Brock Lesnar. And this is when we would have the next big thing really take over and crown himself as the top dog in WWE, as Brock Lesnar would become the youngest WWE champion in history. At this point, the champion could float between both shows, Raw and SmackDown. Raw's GM was Eric Bischoff, and SmackDown's GM was Stephanie McMahon. And Stephanie McMahon would drop a bombshell shortly after Brock's victory at SummerSlam that would surely shake the foundation of Monday Night Raw specifically.
Man, why don't you just get the hell out of my building? No, wait. You can't help yourself. A historic night here on Eric Bischoff's Raw. I mean, can you dig it? The undisputed World Heavyweight Champion here on Raw, making his debut. And I've got the #1 contender. This is too much. Triple H, it is too much.
Eric, do you ever shut up? You know, I'm just curious. You're right. Tonight is a historic night on Raw, and I couldn't miss it. But Triple H is the #1 contender for what?
What do you mean for what? For the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. You know the deal. The champion wrestles on both shows.
No, Eric. It's the champion's prerogative which show he wrestles on, and I happen to pay Brock Lesnar a whole lot of money to be an exclusive to SmackDown. So you can watch us Thursday night. Let's go, guys. Oh, but one other thing, Eric. You know, tonight, history has been made. Because tonight is the last night that Raw will ever see an undisputed world champion. Oh, and just one more thing, Eric. How do my peaches taste now?
So an absolute bombshell by Stephanie McMahon, pardon me, but as she announces that Brock Lesnar has become an exclusive to SmackDown, and that would really shake the foundation of the WWE landscape, because the flagship show, and look, now in 2023, we talk about SmackDown being the A show, arguably the flagship show at this point, especially being on a network like Fox. And it is just weird to go back and watch how far ahead Raw was at this point in time. Like, SmackDown had only been in existence for 3 years. So now this is a show that's left without a world champion. But, as Eric Bischoff said, Triple H was the #1 contender for the Undisputed Championship. And he would, now that he had no title to face off against, he was awarded the World Heavyweight Championship by Eric Bischoff. And quickly, he would face off against Ric Flair in his first ever title defense on Monday Night Raw, which he would successfully retain the championship. And Ric Flair would go on to then become Triple H's manager for the foreseeable future, a run of almost 3 years. So the first major title defense of Triple H was at Survivor Series in 2002, where we saw the first ever Elimination Chamber between Triple H, Chris Jericho, Shawn Michaels, Rob Van Dam, Kane, and Booker T. And this would result in Shawn Michaels winning the World Heavyweight Championship, the first ever Elimination Chamber, and he wins his first title in how long was it at this point? 4.5 years since he lost the championship to Stone Cold Steve Austin in 1998 at WrestleMania 14. And it was a major moment, right? A returning Shawn Michaels in 2002. How special could it be? And it certainly felt that special the following night on Monday Night Raw.
Shawn An unprecedented night. Here we go.
You'll never guess what I found last night.
So you have Shawn Michaels come out, the second ever World Heavyweight Champion in WWE history. And he would only hold this title for a month. He would quickly drop it to Triple H at the Armageddon pay-per-view. Or was it Vengeance? It's one of the two. Whichever pay-per-view they were holding in December at that point in time. I believe it was Armageddon. And he would drop into 3 stages of Hell match. And one thing that's very important here is that aside from the tag team titles, this is the only championship Shawn Michaels would hold in his second run with the company from 2002 until 2010. And that, to me, is pretty significant. Forget world title, one individual championship victory for Shawn Michaels in his second run with the company in almost a decade. And this is the only title he wins. So that just goes to show the way that they were pushing the World Heavyweight Championship in terms of importance. And being the main championship on Monday Night Raw, the then A show of the brand. Triple H holds the belt all the way until Unforgiven 2003. Goldberg wins the title. And this is another thing. Goldberg comes into WWE in 2003. He never once competed for the WWE Championship. He went right after the World Heavyweight. Obviously made a lot of sense given that the World Heavyweight title was the successor, easy enough for me to say, to the WCW Championship. Goldberg, a staple of WCW in the 90s, would make sense he would go for the world title. He would lose the championship at Armageddon 2003 back to Triple H. So now you go into 2004. You're almost 18 months in to the World Heavyweight Championship being in existence in WWE. Triple H is on his third run with the title. Aside from him, only Goldberg and Shawn Michaels have held this world title. But WrestleMania 20 in 2004 marks a historic moment for the World Heavyweight Championship. And that is that it would, for the first time, main event WrestleMania. And it would be the first time since, I want to say, WrestleMania 1 when there was a tag team match. Maybe I'm missing something here. But it was one of the first times in a very long time that the WWE Championship would not be closing the show at WrestleMania. And the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 20 would be the first ever title to close the show other than the WWE title. And just like that, Chris Benoit wins his first ever world title that would happen to be the World Heavyweight Championship. And obviously we know about what happened with Chris Benoit in his personal life, how tragic that was, what he did, how awful that was. But as an in-ring competitor, if we could discuss that, this was a significant moment for him because it would be the only World Championship he would ever hold, and it was not the WWE Championship, it was the World Heavyweight Championship. Another significant moment of the World Heavyweight Championship was when Randy Orton would defeat Chris Benoit for that at SummerSlam that very same year and become the youngest ever world champion. And by this point, a world champion included the World Heavyweight and the WWE, but that was a title previously held by Brock Lesnar and The Rock before, but both had won the WWE Championship. So now that Randy Orton had won the World Heavyweight title, it became that much more significant because now you were completely categorizing the World Heavyweight title with the WWE title. You're 2 years into its existence at this point on Monday Night Raw. And now you put it and you give a victory to, at that time, the prodigal son, a guy that I think they believe would be the face of the company, even more so than John Cena, on Randy Orton. The title quickly goes back to Triple H, and he continues what now has been known as the Reign of Terror. And you know what? I think Triple H was a guy who really carried that company, took too much flack. You know, Shawn Michaels, by all accounts, didn't want to be world champion. Goldberg had a short shelf life. You had Randy Orton, who wasn't ready for that spotlight. Chris Benoit maybe could have gotten another run, but maybe he was more of a tweener between a mid-card and a main event type of guy. So Triple H, with his fourth title reign at this point of the World Heavyweight Champion, taking it into 2004 out of 2005, he loses it. He gets it back at New Year's Revolution in 2005. And then for the second consecutive year, we have the world title main event, pardon me, WrestleMania, and it's won by Batista. And this is when the World Heavyweight title would be taken in a different path, right? This is when they would really try and move on from the Triple H era of the World Heavyweight Championship. Batista beats Triple H 3 consecutive times, eventually gets drafted over to SmackDown. Now you have the World Heavyweight Championship on SmackDown, the WWE Championship coming over to Raw with John Cena. And this is, in my opinion, when the World Heavyweight Championship started to slowly decline over the years. But it wasn't right away. It really wasn't right away. Because at WrestleMania 22, after Batista was forced to relinquish the World Heavyweight Championship due to injury, and after Kurt Angle would win the World Heavyweight Championship in a battle royal as he comes over to SmackDown, you have a main event, not to close the show, but SmackDown's main event of Rey Mysterio, the Royal Rumble winner, Randy Orton, and Kurt Angle all going at it for the World Heavyweight Championship. And this would showcase one of the more memorable world title victories in the history of WWE.
This is what it's about, bro. This is what it's about, Cole. A World Heavyweight Championship on the line. Leave it all to win. That's what these three athletes are doing.
Randy Orton back in the ring. Goes to work on the smaller man, Rey Mysterio. Again, the champion and the challengers in a triple threat matchup. First man to get pinfall or submission will win the World Heavyweight title at WrestleMania.
The champion does not have to tap, submit, get pinned, to lose the title.
Randy Orton training on an injured Rey Mysterio. The legend killer. Gut wrench. Up on the shoulder is Mysterio. Randy Orton. Dropping Mysterio back in his skull.
Reverse neck breaker from way up.
He is the new heavyweight champion. Mysterio showing guts and heart kicking out.
Well, Randy Orton, you mentioned it earlier, more or less calling Rey Mysterio a charity case, which I think is a flock of bull. Now look at Orton.
Charity case. Mysterio won the Royal Rumble match to be here. Lasted longer than any man in Royal Rumble history. Over an hour
So just like that, you have Rey Mysterio, the underdog story of underdog stories, win the World Heavyweight Championship on the grandest stage of them all. And I mean, the World Heavyweight Championship, I don't want to say that it started getting diluted after this, because there were some damn good programs. But I do felt that it hit a bit of a lull in 2006. Rey Mysterio drops the championship to Booker T, or King Booker, at the Great American Bash, I believe it was, in the summer of 06. And King Booker has a decent run with it. I think it was a bit overrated, remembering it back in real time, but he did a good job with it, and I think Booker T was warranted a World Heavyweight Championship run. But then a returning Batista takes the title back from him at Survivor Series in 06. And then this sets up a pretty colossal match between The Undertaker, the Royal Rumble winner in 07, against Batista at WrestleMania 23 for the World Heavyweight Championship. And one thing that always struck me about this, and I remember watching it in real time at my buddy's place, is that this match went on at, I believe, 8:45. It went on so early in the night, which was striking because the year before it was second to last, and the 2 years prior it closed the show at WrestleMania. Now all of a sudden the World Heavyweight Championship was the third match on the card, something like that. And you think back to Royal Rumble 2004, the last man standing match between Shawn Michaels and Triple H, arguably the best last man standing match of all time, and how historic and important that match felt. And that's no slight against Batista and Undertaker, but it was just very peculiar where they placed the match on the card. And The Undertaker would win the World Heavyweight Championship, his first world title victory since the summer of 2002, when he was the undisputed champion. So you're coming up on 5 years where The Undertaker had not held not only a world championship, but a championship in general. And this would start a pretty good run for The Undertaker in the World Heavyweight title on SmackDown, as Edge would come over, his second cash-in for the World Heavyweight Championship, setting up a nice program between Edge and The Undertaker that would culminate at WrestleMania 24, where the World Heavyweight Championship would once again main event the show. And I felt that when you had the Edge and Undertaker rivalry going on, it really kind of rebirthed and reignited that world championship in terms of importance. And The Undertaker would regain the World Heavyweight Championship. And then, in the later 2000s, I've always said I didn't watch an extreme amount, but you had a lot of, winners who didn't make a whole lot of sense at times. You had Jack Swagger, you had Alberto Del Rio, but Del Rio was almost more towards the end. But I think Edge was a guy that when he retired, that world title felt less and less important. Because you look at from WrestleMania 24 to WrestleMania 26, and he retired shortly after WrestleMania 26, Edge was involved in every single World Heavyweight Championship match. You had him defend it against The Undertaker WrestleMania 24 to close the show. You had him defend it in a triple threat match against John Cena and The Big Show at WrestleMania 25. John Cena walking away with the World Heavyweight Championship. And that was always weird, right? Seeing John Cena with the world title, because he always just felt locked to the hip of the WWE Championship. But that was a pretty cool match to see. And then in WrestleMania 26, Edge successfully defends the World Heavyweight Championship against Alberto Del Rio and is able to go out as the world champion. So, post Edge's retirement, as you get to WrestleMania 27, and, Jack Swagger wins it, and WrestleMania 27, the show opens, WrestleMania 28 is when the show opened, and it was a very unfortunate type of, in my opinion, type of thing where you had Sheamus open the show and defeat Daniel Bryan in less than a minute, just hits a brogue kick. I felt that really devalued the world title. And actually, just fact checking this, I made a mistake. Edge would retire shortly after WrestleMania 27, and that's when he would retire as the world champion after successfully defending the title against Alberto Del Rio. WrestleMania 26, him and Chris Jericho. And Chris Jericho had a good run with the World Heavyweight Championship too. Also a guy who never held the WWE Championship after coming back to the company in 2007. He only had dealt with the World Heavyweight title. And him versus Edge for the World title at WrestleMania 26, and Jericho successfully defended the championship. So from 2008 until 2011, 4 WrestleManias, Edge was involved in all of them. Either walking in as champion, walking out as champion, challenging for the title. Edge was the guy who, the straw that stirred the drink for the World Heavyweight Championship. And the first WrestleMania that he's not there, the title opens the show and it ends in less than a minute. Really goes to show the state of that World Heavyweight Championship after Edge retired. WrestleMania 29 comes around. Alberto Del Rio goes in as World Heavyweight Champion and defeats Jack Swagger. And that was actually a program, if I'm remembering correctly, that kind of overachieved. But let's be honest, Alberto Del Rio versus Jack Swagger for the World Heavyweight Championship, that was a tough look for me. That is when I really was just like, man, this World Heavyweight Championship was really having a hard time staying afloat. But the night after WrestleMania would prove to be one of the most historic moments in the history of the World Heavyweight Championship, even though it was in the twilight of its then existence.
There
And just like that, one of the more memorable World Heavyweight Championship victories ever. And for Dolph Ziggler, it was the only world title that he would ever hold to this day. So very memorable for him. So a mere 8 months later, more or less, this title would be retired. It would ultimately end up on John Cena as he would go up against Randy Orton, and they would unify the championships in a TLC match at the TLC pay-per-view in 2013. And almost 10 years later, the title is finally being brought back. But there is a hell of a lot of lineage to the World Heavyweight Championship. And one other rivalry I didn't actually mention here, going back to, I want to say it was 2012. Yes, 6 months before this. Big Show versus Sheamus. Hell of a rivalry. Hell of a rivalry. One of the more underrated rivalries of that era, of the PG era, I guess you want to say. Sheamus had a really good run with the world title in 2012, and the Big Show was the guy to actually dethrone him. And they actually had one of the matches of the night. So another notch in the belt, for lack of better terms, for the World Heavyweight Championships lineage. But I am very, very excited to see what they can do with the World Heavyweight Championship after being retired and laying dormant for 10 years. But this, I hope, got you guys up to date and refreshed your memories, or if you weren't around or weren't watching wrestling for the during the era of the World Heavyweight Championship, hopefully this guys gave you a good brief on what this title really means. Anyway, guys, that's all I got for you today. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at ADamarco25. You can follow Matt on Twitter at wrestling_audio, or you can email him each and every week for the WWE podcast mailbag. Anyway, guys, I'll be back on Monday with Matt, and I'll talk to you next week.
If you want thought-provoking discussions, great guests, and plenty of laughs, go ahead and check out the Culture Podcast with Jeff and Ant every Monday morning, wherever you listen to podcasts. It's where hip-hop and life intersect. Also, check out the website, theculture.one, for even more content. The Culture Podcast, inspired by and for the culture. Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.